Hello, Comsers. I hope you're having a great second day. My name is Ståle Hansen, and I'm the producer of this session. As always, please ask your questions in the Q&A, and we will go through them at the end of this session. And today, we are going to talk about Microsoft 365 phone system and can it replace your PBX? It will be presented by Martin Hauser. And Martin, take it away. I have muted you, by the way, so you need to unmute yourself because I can't do that apparently.
Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to ComsVerse. First of all, I want to thank everyone for sponsoring this event. This wouldn't have been possible without you. Now, a short introduction of mine. My name is Martin. I'm from Zurich, Switzerland, and I'm working as an IT consultant for the company TwinCap First. I am a first-time speaker, so this is actually my very first session as a speaker. And the format will be just a PowerPoint presentation. What I will do is show some video demonstrations of how calling in team works. Yeah. Like Stel said, the questions will be answered after the presentation. So what is Microsoft 365 phone system? I want to give you an overview so you can decide for yourself if the feature set is enough in order to replace your PBX, or if you might just have to wait a little bit longer. I'm going to focus mainly on the native features, which are built in right into phone system, and we're not looking at any third-party tools or integrations or something like that. I want to give you a little bit of history about the phone system. It has been around since Skype for Business Online, and previously has only been available in combination with Microsoft calling plans, which still have a very limited availability around the world. These are available in only about 10 countries. So since Teams Direct Routing has been available since 2018, we are seeing huge adoption rates and very, very high demand for direct routing and phone system. And therefore, phone system is much more popular than it was just 2 years ago. And I can imagine it's also a lot more interesting to Microsoft than it was before. Another major advantage is that now there's a new license available, which is called Business Voice. It's a package of audio conferencing, phone system, and where available calling plans, or you can also use it with direct routing. And these licenses can be officially paired with Office 365 business licenses. Previously, it was exclusive to enterprise customers of Microsoft. So this opens up a whole new world for smaller companies where enterprise licenses might have been a little bit expensive just for the phone system. So let's take a look at how we can build a PBX inside phone system and what's needed in order to build our call flows. First of all, we need auto attendants. Dialing a number is very easy. Everybody can do that. But what about the PBX features? How do we build a call flow? What about automatic answering? Can we set business hours and holidays? Can we route calls straight to voicemail after hours, etc.? That's where auto attendants come into play. These are voice apps, and they can have multiple numbers assigned. And it automatically answers a call which hits the system, and then it can play a custom greeting message, route calls based on business hours or holidays, do different routings based on different holidays and so on. You can also build IVRs, which are interactive voice responses or menu options where a caller can choose an option in order to get connected to one or another department and so on. And they can also be linked together or nested to build call flows such as the one which is displayed on this slide. This is a very basic example. We just have an incoming call, then we play a greeting, check if it's a holiday or not. And then if it's not a holiday, it checks if it's during business hours. And if it's inside business hours, it will start to ring some agents. If they don't pick up, it will go to another queue, which also will ring a few more agents. And in the end, if somebody picks up, the call is connected. Auto attendants are configured in the Teams admin center. So we have a nice looking web interface. We can see here this auto attendant. It's the entry point where calls first hit our system. So this is a top level auto attendant because it has numbers assigned, and we have two numbers. We have on the left a Swiss number, and we also have a German number. So we can also have multiple Swiss numbers or multiple German numbers or a whole different set of numbers from different countries. This can be very practical if the people behind the auto attendant are the same. They are serving different customers from different countries, but you can provide your customers a way so they can dial in using their national or local rates, and they don't get charged more by dialing a foreign number. Now this is the call flow setting of this auto attendant. We first play a greeting which says, "Welcome to Contoso, thank you for your call." And after that, we route it to another auto attendant, which is basically just our first nested auto attendant. I have it set up like this so that the greeting gets played back every time a customer calls. Of course, we could just add this "Welcome to Contoso" part to every other greeting, but maybe you want to have your greetings recorded professionally and so on, and then you have to put it in every audio file. And like this, it's just a little bit more flexible. So we can have one auto attendant which just has the numbers assigned, plays the greeting, and then routes to another auto attendant. This is the business hours call flow of our second auto attendant called Contoso main. And here you can see we have another greeting which is specific to this call flow. After that, we play the options menu. So we have assigned some different keys from 0 to 4. And each of these keys represents an option in the options menu where a caller can choose a department. For example, if the key 2 is pressed, the call will get connected to engineering, to the engineering team, which then has some agents in the queue who will answer the calls. The really cool thing about this is that we can also define a voice command, which we can define by ourselves. So we have sales, engineering, management, and so on. And the customer can also speak his option or his choice right into the phone. And in the back end, we get the voice recognition directly from Microsoft built into phone system. This is the same for the text-to-speech messages. It leverages Azure's power to generate naturally sounding neural voices, which read the text-to-speech messages. The last type of call flow we can have is a after-hours call flow. So here we have, again, a greeting, which is then specific for after hours. It says, "Hey, sorry, you're calling us outside of office hours. Please leave us a message." And then instead of routing the call again to another auto attendant, we route it to voicemail. And the voicemails are delivered as a shared voicemail to an Office 365 group. So all members of the group will receive an email containing the audio file, and they can play back directly in Outlook or Outlook on the web. On each day, we can have multiple numbers. So lunch breaks, for example, are not a problem at all. And we can set them by either full, half, or quarter hours. So we can make a pretty detailed schedule on when our reception or main number should be open and put calls through, or when they should go to the after hours call flow. Now, the third type of call flow type is a holiday call flow. Basically, we can have unlimited holidays, where each holiday can have its own greeting message and its own action, for example, redirect or disconnect, and so on. We can not just set a start date, but also set a start time. That's pretty cool. So, for example, on Christmas, usually in Switzerland, on the 24th December, we stop working at 4 o'clock, so we can just set our holiday to be active from 4 p.m. And after that, the call will be handled by the auto attendant holiday call flow handler, and it will be active in this example until the 4th of January, all the way through. Now that's the call handling we chose for the Christmas break, because the company still wants to provide limited support, the calls will be forwarded to another auto attendant from the support team, and then they can take the calls. In the case of the Swiss national holiday, we don't work on this day, so we just play the greeting and then disconnect the call. I think that's really, really cool how it's implemented. So basically, we can configure a whole year in advance where each holiday can have a specific greeting, which provides detailed information about why the company is closed, when it will be back online, and so on. And it's not just one greeting for all holidays, which you have to exchange every time before a new holiday comes, like it's seen in some other cloud PBX-based systems. So this is our first video demonstration. On the right side, we have Ben. He's a customer of Contoso. And on the left side, we have Patty. She's working at the management team of Contoso. And Ben is also using Teams and direct routing, and he will now place a call to the auto attendant. And it also includes audio, so you can hear how this would feel like if you were a customer calling somebody who's using Teams and phone system.
Welcome to Contoso. Thank you for your call. We'll connect you to a representative very shortly. Dial 1 for sales, 2 for engineering, or 3 for management. Dial 4 to leave us a voicemail. If you need help, dial 0. You may also speak your choice into your phone.
Management.
I think you said management. Is that correct? Say yes or no, or press 1 for yes or 2 for no.
So a caller can either use the dial pad and choose the option via the keys, or you can also speak it into the phone. And the voice recognition is pretty good because it's also powered by Azure in the backend. Now, the second building block we need for building our call flows are call queues. They have been mentioned before. Now we'll take a look on how they work. Call queues are another type of voice app, which can also be nested, or they can be top level as well, which means they can have a number assigned. They also support a custom greeting where you can upload an audio file. This can be used in scenarios where maybe you have a 24/7 hotline and the call queue is not nested behind an auto attendant. So you still want your customers to be able to hear a welcome message that they're now connected to the queue and so on. So we can use a greeting there as well. But mainly call queues are used to distribute calls to different groups of people, for example, teams or teams or departments. And the agents can be either in an Office 365 group or in a security group. So if you have large groups, you can use already existing groups, or you can also add single users for up to 20 users. And the queue works in the first in, first out mode. So this means that the caller who has been waiting the longest will get connected next, even if it's just 1 second that he's been waiting longer than another one. It supports a default music on hold. While the caller is waiting, he hears music. This you heard it before in the demonstration, but you can also replace this music with your own if you like to. And very important, a call queue always ignores a user's personal call forwarding settings, so that the call always stays in the queue and never gets accidentally forwarded to a user's mobile phone, or even worse, to a user's mobile phone voicemail or something like that. In the screenshot in this slide, you can see we have the call queue marketing, which does not have a user assigned number. Sorry, this means that it can only be reached via the IVR of the auto attendant in front of it. For the call queue management, however, we have a number assigned. So this means the IVR and the auto attendant can be bypassed. Now, Ben is a very important customer of Contoso. So he has received this number from Patty so that he's able to call even outside of business hours. And that's what he will do just now. As you can see, Ben made the call directly to the call queue, and there was no prompt whatsoever about the IVR or something like that. The call just began to ring in the management queue. Now, Patty wasn't quick enough, so her colleague, also from the management team, Deborah, took the call. And Patty can see that in her Teams client. This is also a very nice feature of call queues. So she sees that the call has been answered by somebody else, and she doesn't have to worry about it at all. In call queues, we can have different routing methods. The most common one is probably the attendant routing, where all agents get just tried at the same time. So incoming calls will ring on all the agents, and the first one who takes the call will get it, and the other ones will stop ringing. There's also serial routing, where each agent is rang one after the other, and we can set agent alert times for that. The minimum is 15 seconds, which is approximately 3 rings, or we could set it for up to 3 minutes, which is very long. Round robin means that all calls, all agents get the same amount of calls. So this is used for scenarios, maybe in a sales team where you want to distribute leads or opportunities fair and evenly amongst all team members of the sales team or something like that. And we also have longest idle, which does require presence-based routing. We'll get to that in a second. But the agent, if the agent is available and hasn't received a call for the longest, the call will be routed to him. When presence-based routing is active on a call queue, it means that only agents which have the status set to available will get calls. So if they are busy or out of office or away or anything else than available, the calls will not bring them. This also applies for users which are busy of an Outlook appointment. So even if it's just a blocker or a reminder or basically anything that changes your status in Teams away from available will also not receive calls. And this can be very handy in companies where you have large queues and very many agents per queue. So there's probably always somebody who's available, but it's less practical in organizations which have smaller teams and very few agents per queue. For example, if you have a team meeting and everybody has an Outlook appointment, then everybody's busy and no one would get the call. Now, one of the biggest advantages of call queues are the feature to opt in or opt out of taking calls from the queue. So this is perfect for vacations, part-time employees, hotline triages, or even just focus time. And what's so good about this is that the administrator only has to enable this feature and trust the users to do it themselves, but there's no adding and removing agents from a queue if somebody wants to be doesn't want to be distracted or anything like that, or like I said, part-time employees where they maybe only work some days in a week or only on mornings or afternoons and so on. They can just manage it themselves. And for those of you who still remember the link aka.ms/cqueue settings, where you had to sign out of a queue in Skype for Business through your browser, well, those days are gone. It's now available in the Teams client, in the Teams web client, and since a few weeks, also on iOS and Android app. That's very nice. So what options do we have to handle the calls which are going to a queue? Here we can see we have 2 members of this queue. This is the call queue sales. So we have Christy and Isaiah, and we also have conference mode enabled. This is also a very new feature which reduces the amount of time it takes to get the call connected dramatically. So if you've been experiencing issues with call queues and long connection times, I definitely recommend to turn on this option. We have the routing method set to round robin because it's a sales team, so everybody gets the same amount of calls. Of course, if they want to, they can opt out of taking calls. Now we can have a call overflow handling, which means that only, in this case, only a maximum of 10 calls is allowed in this call queue. This can be, for example, if the call has 10 agents, we can set it to 10 so that no customer has to wait. And if the queue is overflowing, we can redirect it, for example, to voicemail, so the callers don't have to wait if there is no available agent anyway. And the other one is called timeout handling, where we can specify a maximum wait time for customers. Here it's set to 5 minutes. So this means if nobody picks up the phone within 5 minutes, the calls will be redirected to the marketing call queue. So we have many options to control how the call flows, if nobody picks up, where it goes next, and so on. How does it all look from a user's perspective? In Teams, we also have our contacts. We have a synchronization with the Exchange personal address book. We can create and manage contacts directly in the Teams client. We have support for custom groups. We also have some system ones like Delegates and speed dial and favorites. These are groups which are already built into Teams, but we can also create our own groups. And yeah, of course, we have speed dial. How common questions I hear a lot from users or customers which are new to Teams and maybe are not familiar with Teams yet. They're still used to their legacy desk phone and PBX and so on. They want to know, how can I do stuff like do a blind transfer, or can I do a consultative transfer? How can I do that? Can I set a permanent call forwarding? What are call groups? What is boss delegate feature, and so on. And also there's a feature called call park and retrieve. We'll get to that in a minute. And a new feature which has been announced by Microsoft is safe transfer, which means that once a call is transferred and if it's enabled, the call will get back to the transfer if the other user is not able to pick up the call. So you can be sure that the call gets back to you, and you can tell the other person on the phone that you didn't reach the destination user. So in this screenshot, we can see the Teams client settings of Miriam. She's another user of Contoso, and she has set for call settings that the calls ring her. But if she does not pick up within 20 seconds, the calls will be forwarded to our call group, which consists of 2 members. We have Alex and Isaiah, and it's configured to ring them both at the same time. We could also change this to a serial order like we have with call queues, but with call groups, we only have 2 options, all or serial. There's support for a caller ID policy. So in this case, we have Ivan, which is part of the support team. And on the right side, you can see the caller ID policy in Teams Admin Center on the screenshot above, where we replace the caller ID with the number of the support auto attendant. And you can see that he has assigned a direct number in his Teams client, and as well assigned a caller ID policy at the bottom of the screenshot on the left. You can see the caller ID policy support, which means that once he makes an outbound call, it will never display his direct number, but it will always display his the number of the support auto attendant, so that if somebody calls him back, they don't miss the calls because maybe he's not available or something like that. Let's take a look at this in real time or in action. He will not make a call to Ben. And Ben just sees the number of the support call queue and not the real number or the directly assigned number of Arvin. Now we have a demonstration about a consultative transfer with a call. There are two options. There is consulting via chat or via call. So Ivan is receiving a call from Ben, which he answers. Then he's going to consult with Deborah. So he searches for her and calls her. Now Ben is put on hold. Now they're consulting. And once they're done, he just clicks transfer. And now Ben is on the phone with Deborah. So it's very easy, all done via in-call controls, and it's pretty intuitive, even for new users which are new to Teams. What's also possible is that you can have delegates in Teams. So Miriam is a member of the sales and marketing team, and Alex is part of the marketing team, and sometimes he is helping her out. So Miriam has set him as her delegate, so he can make and receive calls on her behalf, but also change her calling settings. So in order to do that, Alex can just go into settings and then manage delegates. There he can see Miriam. Now he can go into her call settings and choose how the calls should be treated when they hit on Miriam's Teams client. Now on the left side, again, there is Alex with the number ending in 4079. First, he will call Ben as himself. And on Ben's side, it will show him that Alex is calling. Now, Alex will place another call, but this time he will do it on behalf of Miriam. Now notice how the number has changed from 4079 to 4077. Unfortunately, Ben has missed both calls, but he will now call back Miriam. But as you probably can remember, Alex set Miriam's calls to be forwarded to her delegates, which is him. So Alex can now see that this call was actually received for Miriam. So it's pretty nicely done. You can always see if a call was intended for you or if it was forwarded and so on. Of course, in order to make calls, we also need some top-notch clients, and that's what we're going to take a look at next. We have a variety of clients. First of all, we have desktop. It's available on Windows, Mac, and even Linux. And we also have certified headsets from different vendors. I'm using a Poly Voyager UC4 2020, by the way. And of course, we also have mobile, Android, iOS. On iOS, we even have CallKit API integration. So the calls look just like on the screenshot. They look like their native calls. We can use slide to answer, and they will also show up in the iPhone's call history, not just the Teams app, but also the iPhone's call history. And we do have some Teams native phones from Poly, Yelling, Audio Codes. These are all Android-based, and they have a Teams app installed, which also receives frequent updates. There's still some companies which use Skype for Business third-party IP phones. These can be used as well with some limited functionality, and these are supported until 2023. Now, I talked about the call park briefly before. Again, we have Miriam on the left side, and she receives a call from Ben. But then she suddenly realizes that she has to leave the office. So, and she doesn't want to tell Ben that he should call her again, or she doesn't want to hang up and call again. So she just parks the call, receives the code 16, and on her iPhone, she enters the code 16 again. And now she's connected back to Ben on her iPhone. So this can be pretty easily done to switch between clients. You just park the call and retrieve it on the other one. But of course, you can also use this to transfer or park calls and hand them over to another user, for example, in a public space or in a production hall or something like that, you can take a call, announce it by a speakerphone, and then ask somebody to go to a common area phone and pick the call up again using this code. Let's wrap it up. Of course, there are also some shortcomings of phone system. At the moment, unfortunately, there is no way of controlling all of your numbers or a given range of your numbers centrally, how they hit your system. So if the numbers are configured, they will just start ringing on the users, except if they're mapped on auto attendant, then you can control the business hours and so on. If you want to be able to do that, there's options available. For example, the Anynode software SBC has pretty powerful PBX-like features. You can use time of day routing there and create your own routing rules so that all numbers, for example, on a holiday, all numbers are redirected to a main number where it will then play a greeting and after that leave a voicemail or something like that. Currently, there's no option to manipulate direct routing numbers, what was shown before with the caller ID policy. That's only possible for Microsoft service numbers, but you can add this functionality via the SBC, so you can manipulate your direct routing numbers for outbound calls. That can be easily done with Anynode. It has a very easy graphical web interface for dial string rewriting. You can also create parallel calls and so on. And the best thing about this is that you don't have to learn any syntax to do this. It's just all GUI based. Forwarding to an external PSTN number from an auto attendant, for example, if it's outside office hours and you want to forward it to a mobile or something like that, this is not available natively yet. It's coming though. It's already there are already tooltips in Teams Admin Center. This should be available within a few weeks or months, I guess. But if you absolutely need to do it, you can still do it with a dummy user, which has just permanent call forwarding enabled. And currently, there's no indication of missed calls to a call queue. So if somebody calls the queue and hangs up before somebody took the call, you will not see that unless you're using an iPhone, which also has an agent signed into the queue. Then you can see the missed calls in the iPhone's call history. Now, a little something about the manageability. Implementation of calling plans is very easy. You can easily do it yourself. You just have to order numbers and add the licenses. Setting up direct routing is a little bit different. If you want to do it yourself, it requires some knowledge in SIP and voice over IP technologies. So if you're not familiar or if your team is not familiar with those, I recommend to hire a consulting company which does the implementation, and after that it can be easily handed over to an internal IT team. Stuff like changing a phone number or changing business hours, adding holidays, changing the call flow a little bit, and so on. That's very easy, and everything can be done through the Teams Admin Center. It's very low maintenance because it's software as a service, so you don't have to worry about upgrading servers, patching servers, replacing servers, and so on. It all runs in Microsoft 365. And yeah, there are a few exceptions. For example, enabling enterprise voice for a direct routing user is only available via PowerShell command. It cannot be done in the portal yet. But even adding SBCs and creating routes and so on, this was also exclusive to PowerShell. Previously, it's now available in the Teams Admin Center via web interface. So even that has gotten a lot easier. But if you're a pro, basically everything can be scripted in PowerShell, even creating of auto attendants and call queues. Basically, you could build all of your call flows in PowerShell. So to summarize all of the main advantages, what phone system gives you or your organization is it's really fully integrated into Teams. It's one hub for collaboration. You got instant messaging there, also meetings, voice and video calls to other Teams users or Skype users. You get PSTN calling functionality. You also have voicemail in the same system and even audio conferencing with conference bridges. It's ever evolving. Since 2 years, we have seen so many feature updates since direct routing has been released. You get interoperability and, of course, free calls with federated Skype for Business or Teams organizations. It's a secure platform. All calls are encrypted between Teams and the SBC. You get a robust set of policies if you want to control a little bit more what users are allowed to do and what not. For example, with a calling policy, you can just prohibit some users to forward calls to their mobile number. If you want to avoid having a very expensive phone bill at the end of the month, you can just disable that and advise them to use the Teams client so they can answer their calls via the native app. You can use Teams from anywhere with a variety of clients with any internet connection because it all runs in the cloud. So yeah, and auto attendants and call queues, we have seen what they're capable of. We have seen that there's voice recognition or text-to-speech, voice synthesization. It's all built in. There's not really additional cost for these licenses. You can have as many auto attendants as you want. It's all included basically in the user licenses for phone system. And I want to stress again, almost everything can be scripted and automated with PowerShell, which can also be a huge cost saver if you want to automate your provisioning of new users or deprovisioning of users who left the company and so on. Now, the question you all have been waiting for, can it replace your PBX? I know it's not the answer you wanted to hear, but as with every IT product, it really depends on your requirements. So hopefully you now know enough about phone system to decide for yourself. And from my perspective, if you're coming from Skype for Business without any third-party tools integration, I'd say definitely. Also for small and mid-sized firms with average requirements, it's no problem if you can live with a few compromises. There's nothing to worry about. And for large enterprises and call centers, it's just probably not there yet. But there are a lot of options for call centers and contact centers. We do have them here at ComsFirst. There's, for example, Anywhere 365, Landis Technologies, or Luware, which all offer contact center solutions. They have booths here, so go check them out. We also have, Anynode also has a booth here. You might want to check them out too. Yeah. So that's it for today. These are some links and sources. I will upload the presentation later to the channel. So if you want to check them out, feel free to download it and visit these links. And now we go to questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Martin. I really liked the thorough demo of auto attendant and call queues. Well done. We got one question here. Is it possible to put an analog device phone number as a member of a call queue group, even though a user with permanent call forwarding to the analog device? If a user is setting up call forwarding as a group member to an external number to the call will be forwarded or not. So if you put your forwarding settings, will it be forwarded? And for SFB, it did not for auto attendant. Did you get the question? And
I think so. Yes.
Yep.
This is not possible because the call queue always the call always stays in the queue, and you can only use basically Teams users as recipients for the call queue calls. And to avoid forwarding a call to, for example, a user's cell phone or something like that, the call stays in the queue. So unfortunately, it's not possible in this scenario.
But forward to PSN would help in time?
Yes, this is then the PSTN number can be put in as a forwarding target for an auto attendant, but not for a call queue. So maybe if you have an after-hours call flow, you can then, instead of, you have three options: forward to a user, or forward to another voice app, or forward to voicemail. And then there will be a fourth one, which will be forward to an external number.
Right. And that's typically the reason why people ask this question, is that can we forward to a phone number after hours, for instance, because people are not at their desk. I have a couple more questions here. Good stuff. Is there any supervisor tools like RG agent capability with Teams?
Sorry, I didn't understand. Can you repeat it, please?
So supervisor is typically listen in to calls and typically call center tools, I would say.
Not natively for this, you have to contact one of those contact center providers I just mentioned at the end, like Blueware, Anywhere 365 for Landis Contact Center. They do have functionality to listen in, but it's not available natively in phone system as of today.
Okay, thank you. Another question here: is there any form for wallboard for queue monitoring?
Also not natively available in Teams. There are some companies which do provide call queue reporting, but this is also at the moment, it's a little bit of a shortcoming. Reporting is not very detailed at the moment. You can, for example, you can query a queue in PowerShell and see how many calls there are in the queue, but yeah, it's not very sophisticated right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I had the chat with Code Software. They have a booth here at Comsverse, and they do have some wallboards for auto-attendant call queues, but there are some limitations, as you say, Martin, that there are up to 2 to 3 minutes delay because they query the Graph API and the CDR records. But there is a wallboard, so check out what they can do and see if that is what you're looking for. Another question here. Great set of questions. Will Microsoft Business Voice for SMBs have the same functionality that you've shown today?
Yes, it's totally the same. It's just previously the licenses were exclusive to enterprise. Now they have lifted this arrangement, and Business Voice licenses can be applied to the business licenses. One thing that should be noticed is that the Business Voice license, at least in Switzerland, it's only available through CSPs or indirect resellers, and you cannot buy it directly at Microsoft with a credit card.
That's correct. And Business Voice is up to 300 users. Over 300 users, you need to have enterprise licenses, and then you add phone system and audio conferencing as add-ons.
Exactly.
Another question here: is there a limit to the number of auto-attendant queues you can have?
No, you can have as many auto-attendant queues as you like, as far as I know. If it's a top-level auto-attendant and a number is needed, a license is needed for number assignment, but this is a free license. It's called Phone System Virtual User. And if I remember correctly, you can add one license for Phone System Virtual User per 10 phone system licenses. But I guess basically there's no limitation.
Yep. And so here's a question I'm not sure I understand it. What about clip changes?
I think this question is about the calling line identification presentation, which is the outbound number which is shown on calls. It's possible to use Microsoft service numbers like we've seen in the demo for the outbound call of the support member. And otherwise, if your provider, if you use direct routing and your provider supports clip node screening on the trunk, you can manipulate all of these numbers on the SBC directly. We have a lot of customers who do it like this. Some of them just want to display all of the, for all users, just to display the main number of the company. So we can do stuff like that on the SBC.
Great stuff. That was all the questions. I think there were lots of good questions here. If you want to hang out with Martin and ask him some more questions, have some discussions, we can move over to the breakout room. I posted the link here, and you see it also in his PowerPoint presentation. Make sure you go in and review this awesome session, and we'll see you in the breakout room.
Okay, see you there. Thank you very much for your attention.